I decided to do the podcast on the Egyptian Book of the Dead, and it all started when they needed help with ancient Egypt to figure out how to get into the afterlife, and Egyptians expected the gods to judge them, and they wanted to be guided through by previous people giving examples on how to get through. And those who understood the book knew exactly how to make their hearts light and answer God's questions and which passwords to get into the afterlife. Shortly before the new kingdom started, that's when the book became kind of new to the ancient Egypt. It started in 1700 BC and kind of was still even newer from 1430 BC. And it was even written on walls of the burial chambers and even inside of coffins. The papyrus rolls developed after coffins were written on, so more people had access to them. And usually the papyrus rolls were found in burial tombs, in the coffin, and outside the coffin. The ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead were still in good condition due to the preservation of the body being mummified and everything being so closed in to preserve the bodies that even the rolls lasted all this time. And it was because of the papyrus rolls being made of like paper-like. They were very fragile. When people still to this day look at them, and they can rip if you don't take the best of care of them, but they still are in great condition. Lots of illustrations were in the Book of the Dead, some text but mostly pictures because that's what they focused on, and most people buy the books just to see the pictures and not even look at the text. There was roughly around 200 to 250 spells in all the books. Some might even have just 3, all the way up to 160. It just varies. And nobody comes back to tell you after they die about the afterlife. You pretty much have to read the books to figure it out on your own. Gods have certain powers. Gods have powers no humans can be like, which makes the Book of the Dead very extremely important because it tells you everything about those gods. There's a king of the dead, and you have to go through the portals to the afterlife, and you have to pass all these guards that are like the creatures. It could be just little dwarfs, or it could be serpents, or just any type of form of creature to protect the gates, and you have to pass through every single one until you get to the afterlife. Mummification was huge because it was a great fear in ancient Egypt of losing your identity, especially your heart. It was your essence. The body stays in the tomb, but parts of the body go to the afterlife because they believed they still needed to work after the afterlife. It could have been just an arm or a head or any of that. They believed it continued. All the ideas associate with burial practice in the Book of Dead, mummification, and the Book of the Dead are very rare now today. And even then, as long as they're wrapped with cloth in a form of wrap, sometimes even skin, they believe they can still get into the afterlife. It's just a different form of mummification. As long as they're wrapped, it's pretty much all set and they can move on. Amulets are very magical in this sense. They usually have a heart-shaped amulet placed on the heart and allows the process to get through judgment of the dead. Magic was a very positive force. Used magic in everyday life, And when they needed the magic, it would be through like everyday challenges such as childbirth, sickness, death, and they made sure if you were about to give birth, the chamber is pure and no demons are there. They were also very concerned about not having enough knowledge to get through the gates, and that simply could have stopped them from even going to the afterlife if they did not know any of the knowledge. And the two most important gods that were stated in the podcast are the jackal head god, which is the embalming god, preserves the body, and usually were priests with just a jackal head. And then Silas is the creator and ruler of the dead, and he was the first one mummified, and he was killed by his brother, and his wife and son preserved him. The body placed and stayed into the tomb through the spells and rituals of the funeral, and you would emerge into the daylight was the biggest thing with one of the spells in the book. The heart of an individual is weighed against a feather, which is the right way of behavior. The heart is the most important part of the preservations. The heart is left in the body, and it's the biggest seat of intelligence, of memory, mind, and the heart remembers exactly who you are and what you have done with your life. Other organs are mummified, but the heart is left alone because it doesn't decay because it's muscle. Weighing is done by the god of embalming. The declaration of innocence. When the person enters the judgment, he is asked to speak to Silas. Then 42 judges and who are gods has to make statements, just kind of the basics of life, like I did not kill a person, I did not commit a crime. And pictures and are copied all over the tomb walls, which were huge if they could not access the scrolls, then they would have them on the walls, and everyone focused on the pictures. Till this day, you could have historians go and look, and all they focus in on is the pictures. The pictures are the huge thing. And the Book of the Dead is a guide if something does not go right or it hides something. And it also is there because you might forget something in the afterlife, so it reminds you, such as a god or anything that you would possibly need to know to move on. And the book started to go away around 30 BC. It just declined. The reasons are Egyptians are multicultural and they started to have different beliefs because they went under Roman beliefs and started to go under their leadership.